My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 30 years old and live in Phoenix, Arizona. I work as a project coordinator for a construction company. My husband, Derek, is 34 and works as a real estate broker. He has a specific habit. He calls any chore he doesn't want to do woman's work. I've been hearing that phrase since our first year of marriage. The time I forgot to iron his shirt before an open house, Derek said, "You can't even handle this one simple thing." When I told him to iron it himself, he just laughed. My mother never let my father go without a pressed shirt. I let it slide back then, thinking it was just a clumsy way of speaking. But as time went on, woman's work became the ultimate conversation ender. Who cooks? Who cleans? Who apologizes? And who has to be gentle to keep the peace? It was Wednesday, 8:16 p.m. I had just gotten home from a long day at a construction site. As I was kicking off my shoes at the door, Derek called out from the living room, "Where's dinner?" I looked at the clock. Nothing had been cooked in the kitchen. On the table sat an empty pizza box and 2 beer cans. "I got home late tonight," I said. "Heat something up or we can order in." Derek scoffed. "You sound like a boss. This is a home, not an office." I opened the fridge and pulled out a container of leftovers. "I'll heat this up," I said. Derek stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. "No, I want something fresh. Leftovers are for the days you're being lazy." I set the container down. "I'm not being lazy. I worked all day. You were home too." "I was home closing deals," Derek shot back. "You do your part. That's woman's work." I looked him dead in the eye. "And what exactly is my part?" Derek shrugged. "Cooking, cleaning, and not acting like a man. You're always so blunt when you talk." I realized then, it wasn't about dinner. He wanted me to be a pleasant version of myself so he could always be right. I didn't argue. Instead, I placed my phone face down on the kitchen counter and hit record. I did this because Derek always acted one way when we were alone, and another way when there were witnesses. "Order something for yourself tonight," I said. Derek stepped closer. "Are you trying to teach me how to cook? If you can't handle the basics, don't expect any respect." I opened a food delivery app, picked out something for myself, and hit order. Derek laughed. "A salad? Are you punishing me with leaves?" "I'm eating what I want," I said. "If you want something, get it yourself." His smile vanished. "Naomi, do you know what my mother would say if she saw you acting like this? You're not feminine. You don't know how to be a wife." This Sunday was his mother's birthday lunch. I looked at Derek and spoke slowly. "You brought up your mother at just the right time." Derek switched to an authoritative tone. "Wear a dress this Sunday. Get there early to help in the kitchen. My mother hates a woman who just sits around." "Why don't you get there early?" I asked. Derek looked at me as if the question broke some fundamental law. "Because I'm a man." I didn't answer. I grabbed my bag and went upstairs. Derek called after me. "Fine, just walk away. If you can't do your job, don't complain later." In the bedroom, I locked the door and listened to the recording. The phrases were clear: woman's work, not feminine, don't know how to be a wife. I opened my notes and wrote, date, time, quote, context, audio saved. No more verbal arguments. I added one more line. Sunday will have witnesses. It wasn't that I wanted to cause trouble, but Derek was always loudest when he felt the crowd was on his side. 10 minutes later, he texted, "Don't play games. Get home early tomorrow to cook. I have a client coming by to see the house." I screenshotted it and saved it to an album titled Derek Proof. I marked Sunday on my calendar. Not to prepare a dish, but to prepare a way to not be labeled disrespectful, just for saying no. This time, I would let the evidence speak for itself before they could twist the narrative. Thursday morning, I left the house at 6:40 a.m. In the car, I listened to the recording one more time. Not to fuel my anger, but to remind myself, if someone denies it, I have the data. 10:05 a.m. Derek texted. Remember to buy flowers for my mom, and don't be late. She hates disrespect. 10:12 a.m. He followed up. Wear the blue dress. Don't wear your work clothes like you're going to a meeting. 10:13 a.m. One more. My mom says you're cold. You just need to know your place. I screenshotted the whole thread, saved it to the Derek Proof album, and logged it into my timeline. At lunch, I called my best friend, Maya. I told her, I'm going to show up exactly at the time on the invite. I'm not going at 10:02 a.m. for women in the kitchen duty. Maya replied, if you speak up alone, they'll retell the story however they want. You need witnesses or documentation at the very least. I took that to heart. Don't engage with emotions. That evening, Derek got home at 7:30 p.m. He scanned the kitchen like an inspector. Dinner? He asked. I've already eaten, I said. Order whatever you want. He gave me a punishing smile. You think you're teaching me a lesson, but Sunday is different. My mother isn't an outsider. I replied, I'll be there at 12:30 p.m. as the family group chat stated, not 10 a.m. Derek frowned. You always turn everything into a rule. My mother just wants you to fit in. Fitting in doesn't mean going into the kitchen to do my part, I said. He set a pot down on the stove harder than necessary. You're talking like those people on the internet again. My mother hates that stuff. I asked, did you ever tell your mother that you have hands too? Derek looked at me like I'd committed a crime. My mother raised me traditionally. If you married me, respect that. Respect doesn't mean service, I said. Derek stepped closer, his voice low. Naomi, if you make my mother sad, I won't protect you. You're on your own. I didn't argue. I just hit record again, left my phone in my coat pocket hanging by the chair, and asked slowly, did you just say, you won't protect me? He gave a dry laugh. Don't be dramatic. I said you need to know how to behave. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, listened to the clip, and added it to the timeline. Thursday, 8:12 p.m. Derek. I won't protect you. Friday morning, I heard Derek calling his mother from the living room. His voice was loud enough to carry down the hall. Don't worry, Mom, he said. Naomi's been stressed with work lately. I'll make sure she wears a dress and helps out in the kitchen properly. He laughed, as if he'd cleared the path. I walked down the stairs with heavy footsteps so no one could say I was sneaking around. Derek hung up the moment he saw me. You heard all that? He asked. I heard enough, I replied. Saturday, Diane, his mother, texted the family group. Sunday 10 a.m. women in the kitchen, men on the grill. I screenshotted it. I didn't reply. I stopped by a florist, bought a neutral bouquet, and kept the receipt in my wallet. Not for the money, but so no one could say I showed up empty-handed. That night, I sent one line to the group chat. No explanation. Naomi will be there at 12:30 p.m. per the invitation, bringing flowers for Diane. I screenshotted my own message immediately, before anyone could delete the group or claim Naomi didn't say anything. A minute later, Derek texted me privately. See? Was that so hard? Stop making things difficult. I replied with one sentence. I will arrive on time for lunch, and I will not be participating in gender-based roles. Derek called immediately. Are you planning to embarrass my mother? I'm planning on not being called a bad wife just because I'm not standing in a kitchen, I said. He lowered his voice. If you cause a scene, my mother will call you ungrateful, and the whole family will believe her. I looked out the window and said, then on Sunday I'll bring the one thing they can't twist. Your own words. I hung up. I charged my phone, turned on auto backup, and placed a folder of documents on the table. I went to bed early, refusing to let my brain rehearse the fight. Sunday wouldn't be a day for arguing. It would be the day I stopped playing the part. I arrived at Derek's mother's house at 12:29 p.m. I parked at the end of the driveway because the spots near the door were full. The Phoenix sun was beating down, making the car door handle feel like it was burning. I held the bouquet in one hand and my bag in the other. My phone was already set to quick record. The moment I reached the porch, the door opened. Diane stood there in a crisp white blouse, her hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a tight, forced smile. "Naomi," she said, drawing out my name like a sentence. "You made it. Just in time for the food, I see." "I made it at the time on the invitation," I replied, handing her the flowers. "Happy birthday, Diane." She took the flowers without looking at me. "Put them in a vase in the kitchen. All the women have been in there since 10. I walked in. 3 people were in the kitchen: Derek's sister, Allison, a cousin named Paige, and an aunt named Carol. They were tossing salads, cutting cake, and setting plates. On the kitchen island was a small chalkboard that read, "Women, Sides, and Desserts." Out in the backyard, I could hear the men laughing around the grill. Allison glanced at me and said quietly, "You're really late." I set the flowers down, keeping my voice neutral. The card said 12:30. Paige shrugged as if she sympathized but didn't dare take my side. Carol was blunter. "That's how it works in this house. The daughters-in-law get in the kitchen." I didn't react. I walked into the living room where Derek was standing with his father, Gary, holding a beer. Derek saw me and flashed a smile as if everything were fine. "You're here," he said. I nodded. "Yep." Derek leaned in, his voice low enough so others wouldn't hear. "Don't start any drama. My mother is having a good time." I whispered back, "I'm not starting anything. I'm just not playing the role." Derek sighed, then turned to Gary and said loudly, "Naomi's been so busy lately. She's gotten a bit rigid." It wasn't a comment for Gary. It was for everyone to hear, a way to label me before I could even open my mouth. Diane appeared behind Derek right on cue. "Daughters-in-law, right?" she said with a laugh. "Not everyone knows how to keep a home." I looked directly at Diane. Keeping a home is a job for both husband and wife. The air in the living room shifted. Derek gave a forced laugh. "Here she goes again." Diane turned to the group near the sofa. "See? She always has to argue. A woman should be soft." It was a trap. If I stayed silent, they won. If I reacted, I was disrespectful. I chose a third option. A question. "I'd like to clarify," I said, my voice steady. "Why is women in the kitchen the rule here?" Derek has 2 hands. Marlene, a cousin of Derek's, laughed. "Oh boy, Naomi, men grill, women do the rest. It's just the order of things." I nodded slightly. "So when Derek calls housework woman's work, you all agree?" Derek snapped his head toward me, his eyes a warning. "What are you talking about?" "I'm repeating exactly what you said," I replied. "You said on Wednesday night, cooking and cleaning is woman's work." Diane gave a dry laugh. "My son doesn't talk like that." Derek grabbed my wrist, lightly but firmly, and pulled me toward the hallway. "Are you crazy?" he whispered. "You're bad-mouthing me in front of my family." I looked him in the eye. "If you said it, own it." Derek hissed. "If you can't do your own job, don't try to lecture me. If you want to be a man, go ahead and be one." I didn't answer. I just hit stop on the recording in my pocket. We went back to the table. Everyone sat down. Diane presided over the meal like she was conducting a ritual. She raised a glass. "To family, and to the daughters-in-law who know their place." I heard the words "know their place" as a reminder. Anyone who didn't would be dealt with right here. During the meal, Diane didn't miss a beat. "Naomi is doing some project, so she likes to put on airs," she told the aunt next to her. "She forgets that at home, you have to be feminine." Gary stayed silent, focused on cutting his meat. Allison looked down at her plate. Derek laughed along, as if it were a harmless joke. I put my fork down, looked around the table, and said loud enough to be heard, "Perhaps you don't know, but Derek often uses these phrases to pressure me into doing everything at home. When I don't comply, he tells me I don't know how to be a wife." Diane slammed her glass down. "Naomi, today is my birthday. You do not bring marital business to the dinner table." I nodded. "Then let me ask, who brought the daughter-in-law knowing her place business to the table first?" No one answered. Derek glared. Diane's face went stiff. I stood up. "I'm going to get some air." Derek followed me, catching me at the back door. "Go back in there. Apologize to my mother." Apologize for what? Not being in the kitchen since 10 a.m.? Apologize for ruining her mood, Derek said, his voice urgent. "I can't apologize for a boundary," I replied. For the first time that day, I saw that Derek couldn't control me with the phrase, "know your place." He looked at me like I was a criminal. But that was only the beginning. The real attack would come when Diane called for a family meeting after the meal, the typical way this family handled a woman who wouldn't fall in line. I had only been in the backyard for a few minutes when Diane called out, "Naomi, come in here." It wasn't an invitation. In the living room, the chairs had been pulled into a circle. Diane sat in the middle. Allison and Marlene were on either side of her. Derek was already seated, his back straight as if he were waiting for a verdict. "Sit down," Diane said. I stood by the edge of the rug. "What did you want to talk about?" "Today is my birthday," Diane began, looking around to ensure everyone was listening. "You showed up right at mealtime, didn't help, and then said things that made the whole family uncomfortable." Derek chimed in, his voice soft. "I told you not to start any drama." I looked at him. "I only asked why women in the kitchen is the rule." Allison snapped back, "Because it's tradition. You just joined this family and you already want to change things." Marlene scoffed. "She thinks she's better than everyone." Diane nodded, then turned to me. "Naomi, you speak with a confrontational tone. You don't know how to be a wife. You're making Derek look bad." I replied, "I am under no obligation to save face for anyone by remaining silent, and I do not accept being told what is woman's work." Diane tilted her head. "Derek doesn't say things like that." Derek seized the moment. "I only said you should be softer. You're over-interpreting." I asked him directly, "So, on Wednesday night, did you or did you not say, 'Cooking and cleaning is woman's work'?" Derek scowled. "There you go again, bringing up private matters." Diane raised her hand. "Enough. I want to keep this simple. Apologize for making me sad today, and promise that next time you'll come early and help in the kitchen like the other daughters-in-law." I said, "I won't apologize for arriving at the time on the invitation. Nor will I promise to help based on gender roles. I will help when I am respected." Marlene blurted out, "See? Stubborn." Derek leaned back, playing the victim. "See, Mom? She's like this at home too. She makes me feel like I'm not even a man anymore." I looked at Derek. "You feel like not a man just because I don't go into the kitchen?" Derek shrugged. "Because you don't know your role." Diane concluded, "Your role is to be a wife, a daughter-in-law, and to keep the peace. If you don't like it, then don't make my son suffer." I replied, still steady, "I'm not making anyone suffer. I'm saying no to the way Derek speaks to me." Marlene said, "You're acting like he's abusing you." "I didn't use that word," I replied. "I am simply telling the truth. He uses the woman's work label to pressure me." Diane stood up. "Naomi, you're overreacting. If you want to be in this family, learn how to behave." I nodded. "I understand. Then I'll be leaving." Derek jumped up. "You can't leave. You treat my mother like this and then just walk out?" I turned to Diane. "Happy birthday." Then I walked toward the door. Derek followed closely, his voice a low growl. You're embarrassing me. You'll regret this. I turned back and looked him in the eye. If you want an apology, you go first. Apologize for calling housework woman's work. Derek gave a cold laugh. Here we go again. I went out to the porch and headed for my car. Behind me, Diane spoke loud enough for several people to hear. See? Ungrateful. She's not fit to be a wife. I stopped at the end of the driveway, my hand on the car door handle. I didn't turn back to argue. I just pulled out my phone and looked at the saved audio file. If I left with only words, they would tell a story about me being moody or angry. But if I went back with Derek's own words, they would have no room to rewrite me. I turned around and walked back. Gary was standing in the doorway, looking uncomfortable, as if he'd realized the lunch had turned into a trial. He looked at me, then at Derek. "What's going on?" he asked. Diane immediately said, "Naomi is overreacting." I looked at Gary. "I only need 30 seconds to ask one clear question." I turned to the whole room. Is anyone here willing to confirm that Derek has never used the phrase woman's work when talking about cooking and cleaning? Derek stood frozen. Marlene bit her lip. Allison looked down. I put my hand on my bag where my phone was. If no one answers, I'll let you hear the exact words. The living room went dead silent. I stood by the door, not moving forward or back. Derek looked at me as if his gaze alone could shut me up. Diane kept her stiff smile, the look of someone who believed a family party could always be managed. Gary broke the silence. "Naomi," he said, his voice low, "what are you planning to let us hear?" 15 seconds at most, I replied. Nothing more. Diane cut in. "Gary, don't encourage her. She's making a mountain out of a molehill." Gary raised his hand, cutting Diane off for the first time all day. "Let her speak." I pulled my phone out. I didn't wave it around like a weapon. I just opened the file and set the volume loud enough for the room to hear. I spoke before hitting play. This was Wednesday night, at our house. Derek talking about cooking and cleaning. I hit play. Derek's voice rang out clear and unmistakable. "You do your part. That's women's work." A collective breath was held in the room. Allison looked up. Paige stood in the kitchen doorway, her face pale. Marlene opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. I stopped it immediately. I didn't drag it out. Derek instinctively took half a step forward as if to grab the phone, then stopped because Gary had straightened his back. Gary didn't yell. He just asked one slow question. "Derek, did you really say that?" Derek swallowed hard. "Dad, I said it because I was frustrated. It was just a way of speaking." Diane cut in. "Everyone says things they don't mean when they're angry. Naomi is just cherry-picking one sentence to humiliate him." I looked at Diane. "You just called me ungrateful in front of everyone. I'm only responding with the truth." Marlene shook her head. "But this is a private matter between a husband and wife." I turned to Marlene. "It became public the moment you all pulled chairs into a circle and told me to sit down so we can settle this." Gary looked at Diane. "Diane, what did you just do?" Diane immediately changed tactics, her voice softening. "I was just trying to protect my son. The way Naomi talks makes him lose face." I nodded slightly. "Then I'll let you hear 10 more seconds to clarify what losing face really looks like." Derek blurted out, "Don't." Gary said, "Let her." I played the second clip from Thursday night at home. Derek's voice. "You make my mother sad. I won't protect you. You're on your own." I shut it off. No one was laughing anymore. No one could use the behave button as a reset. Paige looked down at her hands. Carol, the aunt who earlier said daughters-in-law belong in the kitchen, frowned, as if seeing something that couldn't be covered up by tradition. Gary turned to Derek, his voice no longer questioning but confirming. "You told your wife? I won't protect you? Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then tried to deflect. Dad, Naomi is cutting the clip. It's missing context. I looked straight at Derek. What context makes woman's work normal? Diane hissed. Enough. What do you want? Do you want this family to hate Derek? I don't want anyone to hate anyone, I replied. I want one simple thing. Stop calling me a bad wife just because I don't stand in a kitchen according to a chart. Allison spoke up, her voice not as sharp as before. Derek, do you say things like that to Naomi often? Derek looked at his sister, then his mother, searching for support. Diane answered for him. She's exaggerating. I opened the family group chat on my phone. I didn't show them the screen. I just read the exact line Diane had sent yesterday. Sunday, 10 a.m., women in the kitchen, men on the grill. I locked my screen. I'm not making this up, I said. I am repeating what has been said and what has been written. Gary let out a long sigh. He looked at Diane, then at Derek. A birthday lunch is no place to put someone on trial and force an apology for being on time. Diane stood up abruptly. Are you taking her side? Gary replied very calmly, I'm taking the side of the truth. Derek turned to me, his voice low and threatening. You're done now, aren't you? I nodded. Yes, I'm done. I looked at Diane. Happy birthday. I'm going home. Then I looked at Gary. Thank you, Gary, for asking the right question. I walked out. Derek followed me to the porch, speaking quickly. You think you won? Go home. We'll talk. I turned back and said one thing. We'll talk when you stop calling my dignity overreacting. I got in the car. As I closed the door, my phone buzzed. A text from Derek sent the moment I started the engine. Go home. Don't think you can make me look like a piece of crap in front of them. I looked at the message, took a screenshot, and saved it to the album. I got home at 4:41 p.m. The house was so quiet I could hear the air conditioner running. I put my keys on the table, poured a glass of water, and sat on the sofa. I didn't cry. I didn't feel smug either. I just felt a sense of clarity. Everything had been said publicly, and because of that, it could never go back to being just a way of speaking. At 5:06 p.m., Derek opened the door harder than usual. He didn't say hello. He walked straight into the living room. You're insane, he said. You played recordings in front of my whole family. I looked at him. I played exactly what you said. That was private, Derek replied. You made me out to be a villain. You did that yourself, I said, by saying, woman's work, and I won't protect you. Derek stepped closer, his voice dropping to a threatening but reasonable tone. Do you know what my mother is going to say about you? That you're manipulative? That you record your husband? I nodded. I know. So what do you want? Derek asked. I pulled out my phone and opened the note I had written on Thursday night. I read it without looking up, so my emotions wouldn't trip over the words. 1. As of today, the phrase woman's work is banned in this house. 2. Housework will be based on a clear schedule, divided by hours and responsibility, not by gender. 3. You do not use your family as a court to force an apology from me. Derek scoffed. You're making laws now? I'm setting boundaries, I replied. Because being soft didn't work. Derek shook his head. You're overreacting. You always want to be in control. I looked up. What do you want me to do? Stay silent, go in the kitchen, and let you tell me I don't know how to be a wife? Derek was silent for a beat, then changed his tone. Just apologize to my mother. Just one sentence. Everything will be fine. I answered, I'll apologize if I'm wrong. I am not wrong for being on time or for not following a gendered chore chart. Derek slammed his hand on the back of a chair. You don't understand. That's just how my family is. I said, then this marriage can't be like that anymore. The air went still. Derek looked at me as if it were the first time he'd heard me say that without my voice shaking. Are you threatening divorce? I didn't use the word threaten. I meant it. I am considering leaving a place where my dignity is treated like a joke, and I will do it if you don't change. Derek paced for a moment, then turned back. Who do you think will believe you? Who's going to take your side? My mother will say you're unstable. I opened my phone and set it on the table. I don't need them to believe me. I have the data. I didn't play anything else. I just let him see the Derek proof album and the timestamps. Derek stared, his face hardening. At 6:02 p.m., he spoke more quietly. How long have you been recording? Since I realized you talk one way when it's just us and another way in front of your family, I replied. I don't want to live in two different versions of reality. Derek sat down, and for the first time, his voice didn't sound so certain. I was just raised that way. I nodded. Then you can unlearn it. Or you can stay the way you are, and I'll leave. At 7:15 p.m., I sent Derek a one-page PDF. It wasn't long, containing a housework schedule for the week and a set of communication principles. No name-calling or labels. Crazy, rigid, unfeminine. When there's a disagreement, state the specific need, don't attack. Do not bring in third parties to judge our business. Derek read it, then said, You're treating this like a contract. Because I tried speaking gently for years, I replied. Without it being in writing, you'll just say, I misunderstood. That evening, Diane called. Derek looked at the screen, then at me. I didn't tell him not to answer, nor did I tell him to pick up. I just stayed silent. Derek took the call in another room. I heard bits and pieces. Diane crying, using words like ungrateful, humiliated, and woman. Derek gave a few short responses. He didn't exactly defend me, but he didn't throw me under the bus like usual. Toward the end, I heard him clearly. Mom, I don't want to discuss this anymore tonight. It wasn't a total victory, but it was the first time he didn't let his mother set the rhythm for our entire lives. 3 days later, Derek agreed to go to couples therapy. He didn't say, because you're forcing me. He said, because I don't want to lose this marriage. I wrote that down in my notes, not to use against him, but to remember. There are moments when people choose to change because they see the actual consequences. I also did one final thing. I opened a separate bank account, transferred my portion of the salary there based on a percentage I decided, and set up autosave. Not as a punishment, just so I wouldn't be trapped if things ever went back to the way they were. A week after the birthday lunch, Diane's family group chat went silent. No one texted women in the kitchen anymore. Maybe they hate me? Maybe they're afraid of me. I don't care. I only care about one thing. Since that day, whenever Derek is about to let woman's work slip out of his mouth, he stops mid-sentence. And that pause, however small, is the first sign that the rules of the game have changed.